If AI is your finish line, you've already lost the race.
Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Richard Parfit. I'm the marketing director here at iVentiv, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Gráinne Wafer. Gráinne is an award-winning transformational learning leader of global field readiness functions with high-tech industry expertise. She's currently the global head of field enablement at Udemy Business, and her global experience in fast-paced matrix organizations includes Hewlett-Packard, Qualtrics, Emarsys, Litmos, Flip, and SAP SuccessFactors, to name a few. She's also an ICF certified coach with a passion for developing others, in particular female early talent. She has over 15 years of experience leading and executing in adult learning theories and principles, specifically in sales and customer success. Today, she's going to be speaking about Udemy's Global Learning and Skills Trends report, and we're very much looking forward to getting into the detail of it. Gráinne, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Richard, for the warm welcome. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, we're going to talk about the Udemy Global Learning and Skills Trends report. And before we dive into the detail of it, I wonder if you could just give us a bit of the background. How does Udemy go about compiling this report, and what kind of data, research, and analysis sit behind it?
Sure. So it's an annual report, and we pull together proprietary data from over 17,000 global enterprise customers, UB customers, that Udemy Business customers, and we also have an additional 85,000 instructors. And that really helps us to draw from that huge body, to uncover the key kind of workplace trends and to benchmark the global evolution of AI. Everything is about AI right now, but not just AI, business and technical skills as well. So within the report, we analyze data and calculate kind of the total learning consumption of our learners across all course topics. And the calculation is from July to 1st of July 2024 to the 1st of June 2025. And we then look at the kind of percentage growth in consumption compared to the previous year, and break that down. And really the report for us is it showcases Udemy's expertise as the leading AI-powered acceleration platform and reinforces our credentials as a trusted learning thought leader.
Yeah, and that's such a valuable resource for the learning industry,
Yeah.
and to be able to have such a huge data set of what users are actively seeking out.
Yes.
Could you tell us what are the key takeaways? What are the headlines?
Yeah, so this year there are four key trends which emerged from the annual report. And really it's about, in order to be ready for transformational change in the era of AI and beyond, our customers and organizations and their leaders need to understand the trends. And the four are as follows. AI fluency isn't a technical goal. It's a new operating system. So don't just think of it as a technical goal, but it is absolutely a new way of operating. Um, the second one is immersion beats instruction when it comes to skills development. AI learning happens best in the flow of work. All learning happens best in the flow of work, but AI is no exception. The third one is, you cannot scale skills without scaling leadership, ethics, and agency. So really important that your leaders are on board, that you have the ethics in place and agency. And then the fourth trend that we see again and again is if AI is your finish line, you've already lost the race. So people, tend to think, yes, we need to get upskilled on AI, but that's really just the start of it. So within the report, we dive into these key trends and how leading organizations are embracing these trends and how some of our customers are doing it very successfully.
Yeah, I think that idea that AI isn't something that we're going to work on it for 12 months and then we'll be finished and we will have done AI,
Yep.
really comes across. And when I was reading the report, there's a lot of emphasis on this idea of AI skills versus AI fluency. And as you
Yes.
said, when you're talking about the key takeaways, the report really argues that organizations should put more emphasis on the latter, on AI fluency. So could you give us a bit of detail about what the distinction is between skills and fluency, and why you think businesses should be more concerned with fluency?
Yes, yeah, happy to, Richard. So a lot of the customers that I'm talking to and organizations, my peers in competitive organizations and in other companies, they're talking about AI skills as if it's simply a matter of training people on tools, on code, or data analysis. And they're thinking of it with a very narrow lens. But the core challenge is not teaching people how to use the technology. It's really much bigger. It's about rewiring the enterprise to play, to experiment, and to find ways to incorporate AI into workflows. Then you'll have that fluency to build out not just a new culture, but a new operating model. And the new systems, learning content and behaviors to continuously learn from AI and to adapt it and to lead through it. So AI fluency is really the new benchmark.
And I suppose that's more platform agnostic as well, and allows you to
Yeah,
adapt when the
yeah,
next big AI platform is probably one we haven't heard of yet, and
correct. Yeah,
it
yeah.
allows you to move between them.
Change is happening so rapidly. If I even look back 6 months ago, it's, things are just transforming almost on a weekly basis. What would have taken skills previously, years, it's now weeks and months. Yeah.
Mm.
And I have a couple of things, key ideas and some data points that we saw from the report. AI fluency is not a binary state of on or off. It's really a journey. So it's that journey that we talk about. There are complementary skills needed beyond the technical skills to become AI fluent. And then AI upskilling on the Udemy platform is showing explosive growth with I think it's 10x enrollments in AI courses. I
Yeah,
gotta
I noted down some stats. There was a 13,000% rise in GitHub Copilot, 3,500% rise in Microsoft Copilot. That's that you sort of worry that you put a typo in when you see those kind of stats, but
Yep.
that's enormous growth.
We are seeing incredible growth around AI, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, and then the second and third trends that you talked about in those headline takeaways from the report were the importance of learning in the flow of work, and I noticed the
Yep.
phrase focusing on jobs to be done
Yep.
coming up a lot repeatedly in the report. And second, the importance of leaders setting the precedent and the culture, use the phrase building trust, agency, and ethics. So I wonder if you could just tell us what that looks like in practice, if that's happening and happening successfully in an organization. What does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So learning in the flow of work, I'll take that first one. And as you know, Udemy have a great partnership with McLaren. And I always tend to make these analogies around McLaren. But if you think about the McLaren drivers, they don't learn how to handle a car by sitting in a classroom. They're immersed in simulators, practice sessions, and they get constant feedback loops, where every decision is tested instantly and constantly. A driver always learns faster in one lap of live feedback than in hours of theory. So, it's no different for employees. They build their AI skills the same way, by experimenting in real workflows, getting immediate feedback and adjusting very quickly around the context. I always think, jump in and it's the best way. Failing fast is a quick way to learn. And that's how skills really stick. And Carnegie Mellon Universities did a whole study around practice makes perfect in May of this year. And they found that those who applied skills in practice with immediate feedback, they learned 3 times more efficiently than those who learned by lecture alone. So it's incredible statistic there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm really happy to carry on with the F1 analogies, by the way. So,
Good.
I mean, and McLaren's also a big success story in terms of a change of culture and leaders setting a culture of learning, improving psychological safety. These are
Okay.
all things that Zach Brown has
Yep.
talked about quite
Yep.
extensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
A lot of that comes to that second trend
Yeah.
around leaders. Leaders setting a precedent and a culture, and I think Zach Brown is a perfect example. And again, another McLaren analogy. But during a race, the pit crew and the race engineers coordinate in seconds. They don't micromanage every single move. They set those clear priorities around things like safety and performance and strategy. And then they empower the team to act fast within those boundaries. And everybody understands their role and that trust and trusting each other and trusting the system. And that gives them the confidence to make the right call under massive pressure. And again, if I translate then that to a corporate setting, scaling AI isn't about training individuals in isolation. It's really about scaling leadership with clarity and trust so people can act, with confidence and responsibly with AI at speed. So we tend to think about leadership, ethics, and agency are required for upskilling at scale around AI. Yeah, and the leaders that really play a key role in that transformation by championing the right behaviors around AI upskilling. I do it myself with my own team. I have one absolute expert in AI, and we raise him up and champion him, but he knows the parameters and he'll come back and forth with some suggestions around what might be bending the rules a little bit, and we'll have a discussion around that. But yeah, I think we're all learning. Employees need that agency in deploying AI, but they also need the skills to evaluate the larger context in which they're deploying it.
Mm.
And then providing that clarity, the ethical and strategic parameters, that's really on the leaders, where it's really important, that they understand what the ethics and governance are around, particularly in Europe, I would say, more than in other regions. I do a global role, but particularly in Europe, that's crucial. Yeah, so we've done a lot of surveys and analysis. 88% of employees surveyed by Udemy agree that effective leadership is critical to the success of their organization's AI initiatives. But weirdly, only 48% believe that their leaders are ready for the era of AI, which
Yeah.
is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I'm surprised to hear it's as high as 48%.
Yeah.
But you kind of hinted at this as in what you were saying, but it's not just leaders right at the top of the organization, right? When you talk about you and your team, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
leaders up and down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a real believer, in change transformation and having champions within the organization at different levels and different functions, and different geographies potentially. And really making sure that it's clear for those champions so that they can spread the word too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that sort of brings us on to, well, we've obviously talked about the role of L&D throughout this, but I wanted to ask specifically about the the way in which L&D is going through something of an existential crisis when it comes to AI at the moment and over the last couple of years, and sort of fearing its own imminent demise
Yeah.
as a result of it. And there are other functions who feel very similar. But when I was looking at this report and reading through it, and as you highlight the jobs that need to be done and the work that needs to be done, there's a lot about skills gap analysis, about learning in the flow of work, about gamification and conducting regular pulse checks with employees and learners. And these sound like the core competencies of what L&D is and should be. So
Mhm.
from your perspective, would you say L&D professionals should be more encouraged by that and maybe a bit more optimistic about the role they're going to play in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I am. I think L&D leaders should be encouraged. L&D for me is a strategic driver in all organizations, focusing on people, on performance. And there's, a couple of concrete steps that I am taking, and I would encourage others to take to build that AI fluency, to build that plan that really drives business impact. So a couple of things that we're doing, defining what AI fluency means for your business today. Um, since where you are, and where you want to go next will depend a great deal on where your current state. So that's really important, having that understanding of where you want to get to and what needs to happen. And thinking beyond generic AI training to set clear benchmarks for the key functional teams that go beyond just foundational skills that every team needs. Um, Getting the right tech in place is huge, since tech is really at the heart of what you'll be able to do with AI. So making sure that you've got the tech to support it. Um, I would absolutely recommend that you bake in legal considerations from the start. Don't kind of get caught and have to do it in a hurry. But if you do it from the start, to put those appropriate kind of guardrails in place. And then getting into the details of what's needed by function, since, depending on the teams, different teams have different needs, and that'll vary tremendously. Um, Fostering, and again, I think of it like change management, that shared cross-functional understanding, to embed AI skills development into the culture, making it part of what it means to be successful in the organization. And, there's lots of ways that people can do that, showcasing it and pulling out examples in all company meetings, that kind of thing, of somebody's done this and it was really helpful. Um, the communication around the fluency is crucial. And it requires that continuous practice and experimentation and learning and failing. I'm fine with that too. If you tried something and it was not worth the effort, that's good learning too. But it's the expectation of employee performance in the company that you are trying, because AI, the genie is not going to go back in the bottle. So making sure that people are embracing it, and making it fun. I think learning should always be fun, rewarding, calling out people. Um, it's innovative thinking, and making sure that that learning sticks better is really important. And then I would say, assessing your company's culture baseline around AI to keep that energy moving. You can't, change overnight, but there are maybe small steps that you can do, that will help to move you as a company. And it's not just the technical skills. So I think that's probably where some organizations have missed a beat in the past, where it's not just the technical skills, but it's really about rewiring your entire system, your culture, your workflows, your leaders, so that the organization is adapting continuously.
Yeah, and that organizational and functional context from what you're saying is something that you really need to get a handle on right from the start, because
Yeah.
I guess if we talk about AI like it's one thing, but AI is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different things for different applications depending on what you're trying to do. A manufacturing organization is going to need
Yeah.
a very different kind of type of AI to a marketing agency or something.
Yes, yes, and finance, and then there are limitations and legal restrictions around some things. So yes, it'll absolutely vary by each of our customers. We're seeing that.
Mm. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So if I'm a head of learning in a big organization, I want to get started on this process. You've talked
Yeah.
about kind of some of the steps I need to take, but if you were to narrow it down to one thing to get me started, where would you advise we start?
To get started, gosh, jump in, I would say. Building AI fluency, it takes a deliberate strategy, and a clear roadmap. So I think starting there is a good idea. And we're finding customers and organizations who are doing well at building AI fluency, they're evaluating their fluency level and then taking a kind of a multi-layered skills development to improve it. And the areas where we see that they're focusing on, again, there are four kind of areas that I would think about: building foundational AI skills for all employees, everybody, so that the conversations and people are understanding the language, the logic, ethical considerations, that's kind of for everybody, and potential impact, of how AI is going to impact their work. So that would be foundational for everybody. Um, the second thing I would say is ensuring that AI skills development is applied in role with teams learning primary use cases for their functions and integrating AI into their daily processes. That's really important to build that muscle. Um, and then think about the third one for me would be promoting cross-functional learning agility to break down silos. So it's not just your engineering team or it's not just your product team, but it's across the board. And encourage learning that spans, the traditional function borders and technologies, so that people are really thinking, wow, this is how I can apply it today in this role, but in the future in maybe a role that I want to move to.
Mm.
And then the last one again is around leaders. Make sure that leaders have the skills required to be the architects of change for the organization, to set that vision of how AI is going to transform the business models, value creation, even the culture. And we tend to put a lot of pressure on leaders for everything. If AI is not their strength, for people to champion, for the leader to identify champions so that they can help to drive that architecture of where AI can take the company.
Yeah. And that's where that psychological safety to make mistakes that you were
Yeah.
talking about is
Yeah.
so vitally important, because as leaders, you could say, right, these are the steps we're going to take to get there, and you will do what I say, or you
Yeah.
can enable a culture where the successful ideas will emerge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's crucial.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking us through those key takeaways, and it tallies with a lot of what we see on the iVentiv side when you talk about AI and leadership have been the top two priorities
Yep.
that we've seen for learning leaders, and it sounds like that very much lines up with what you presented in the report. So before I let you go, we have one more question which we're asking all of our interviewees over the last year, which is, what is your most controversial learning and development opinion? So this can be a bit of fun, a bit of tongue in cheek, but what's your controversial opinion?
Wow, wow. So I suppose when I think about L&D and that concern that we have around L&D and how AI is coming in and potentially people are nervous that jobs are going to be lost. I go back, and it's not specifically about AI. It relates really to the L&D function. Um, Douglas Kirkpatrick, the evaluation model from the 1950s, it still remains relevant today. In fact, I think it's probably more relevant than it ever was. One of the things that I hear a lot of learning leaders talk about, we know that some of the L&D functions, they get stuck measuring what's easy and not what truly matters to the strategy of their organization. So in many ways, Kirkpatrick has almost been damaging for L&D functions, because level one is that reaction, the old school smiley sheet. Did they like it? Did they enjoy it? Was it valuable? That the participants complete in. Really not important. I mean, that is controversial, but it really isn't important. The second one is, did they learn something? Um, Again, you can show through, assessments and pre and post. And that's where L&D functions tend to get stuck. They, they tend to be really confident that they had X number of training hours and that they had X number of people who learned. But did it actually move the needle on what the strategic direction of the organization is moving towards? That's always been the challenge. And that's where level three is that behavior change. Really important. We're asking people to unlearn things. We're asking people with AI to do things differently, to stop doing some things, or we're asking them to start doing new things. How do we track that? And that's a harder one to track for an L&D function. And then the top one is like, did it help us? Typically, there's three areas that businesses think about. Did it help us grow the business? Did it help us reduce costs? Or did it help us mitigate risk, stay out of prison? um, and that's what your C-level, CEO, CFO, CRO in most organizations are really concerned about. And where I think, controversially, L&D need to step up is to be aligned around those key strategic priorities of what the business is doing, and less focused on the learning reaction and the learning assessments, and really be able to tie the two together. And at Udemy, we're really passionate about this. I always ensure I start with the problem. I start with the level four. What is the business outcome that we're trying to drive? What's the problem that we're solving? How will we know we've been successful? where are we today? What are the gaps that we need to get to? And that's not easy. And it's not necessarily something that L&D do on their own. It typically happens cross-functionally with an operations team, and maybe with the HR function to help us really get a seat at the table and stay at the table, because to me, L&D needs to be focused less on learning and more on the performance.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a perennial problem, like you say, but I think it really ties together the kind of cutting edge of where we need to be in the AI that is such a big theme in the
Yeah.
reporting AI
Yeah.
fluency
Yep.
with those core skills, and of course you are living that as an organization with
Yes.
providing such useful data in this report and in the way that everything Udemy does is built. So I'm
Yep.
very grateful to you for sharing those insights, for talking us through the key themes of the report. I know Udemy Business are going to be with us for several events next year, and hopefully
Look forward to it. Yep.
hopefully we'll see you there as well. So Gráinne, thanks so much again,
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to seeing you in 2026.